In every war, history remembers the generals, the speeches, the victories carved in stone. But hidden in the shadows are stories no one tells, moments where entire cities stood on the edge of annihilation, and survival came down to one nameless figure. Imagine a city under siege, its people terrified, its defenses crumbling, and the enemy closing in. Just when the end seemed inevitable, an ordinary person, someone no one would ever suspect, stepped forward and changed everything. Yet today, almost no one remembers their name. The question is, why? Before the chaos, he was just another face in the crowd. A messenger boy, barely 17, earning a few coins by carrying letters across the city's cobblestone streets. His days were simple, almost invisible. He was the kind of boy no one noticed, darting between markets, weaving through alleys, his satchel slung across a thin shoulder. To neighbors, he was just the errand runner, someone whose presence barely registered. However, when the war broke out, everything changed. The city that once buzzed with merchants and laughter now echoed with the distant thunder of artillery. Blackout curtains smothered windows, bread lines stretched for hours. Fear was everywhere, clinging to the air like smoke. The boy kept running his routes, delivering scraps of news, ration cards, and, sometimes, letters that never reached their recipients. Unknown to him, those quiet errands were placing him closer to the heart of a storm no one in the city truly understood. Commanders argued in hidden chambers, the enemy crept closer each night, and whispers spread that the city would fall before the week was over. Yet in the middle of this unraveling world, the boy still carried his satchel, still ran through the same alleys, still tried to pretend life was normal. He didn't know it yet, but fate was preparing him for a task that would decide whether the city lived or died. The siege grew tighter with each passing day. The enemy had surrounded the city, cutting off supply lines, choking off escape routes, and leaving only fear to seep into the cracks of every home. From the ramparts, soldiers whispered of an impending assault. Inside the walls, hunger gnawed at bellies and hope was slipping through calloused fingers like sand. The boy, with his satchel slung across his chest, kept running his errands. But now, the papers he carried weren't simple letters. They were orders, maps, fragments of strategy sealed in envelopes marked urgent. His quick feet and youthful anonymity made him the perfect shadow in a city crawling with spies. No one gave him a second glance. No one except those who needed him most. One night, as the air trembled with distant cannon fire, a captain pulled him aside in a candlelit cellar. The man's voice was sharp, his words urgent. A message needed to reach the northern garrison beyond the city walls. Reinforcements were waiting, but only if they received confirmation in time. If the message didn't get through, the city would fall within days. The boy's heart thudded against his ribs. Crossing enemy lines meant certain death if he was caught. But there was no one else. He took the sealed note, tucking it deep inside his satchel. Stepping into the night, he felt the city's silence pressing down on him, broken only by the occasional crack of rifle fire. Every shadow seemed alive, every street a trap. He slipped through alleys, hugging the walls, his small frame blending into the darkness. At the city's edge, he found the first obstacle. Enemy patrols sweeping the outskirts, their boots crunching against frost-hardened soil. He crouched in a ditch, holding his breath as lantern light passed inches from his face. One cough, one twitch, and he'd be discovered. The patrol moved on. His pulse hammered like a drum as he pushed forward. But the further he crept beyond the walls, the more dangerous it became. The land was a no-man's zone, riddled with mud, shattered trees, and the echoes of battles past. He stumbled over discarded helmets, the broken bones of soldiers long forgotten. Every sound became a threat. Every gust of wind felt like a whisper warning him to turn back. And then came the second test as he crossed a ruined bridge. Voices cut through the night. Enemy soldiers, closer than before. He dropped flat to the ground, his body pressed against cold stone, clutching the satchel as though it were his own, beating heart. The soldiers laughed, shouted, and passed a flask between them. The boy dared not move, not even breathe too deeply. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then, silence. He risked lifting his head. They were gone. Shaking, he continued onward, every step heavier than the last. His body ached, his stomach growled, but his mind clung to one truth. The message had to get through, not for glory, not for recognition, but because behind those walls lay thousands of people who had no idea how close the end truly was. The night was at its darkest when he reached the ridge. Beyond it, enemy territory stretched like a living net, crawling with patrols and searchlights. Somewhere past that gauntlet lay the northern garrison, the only force that could save his city. His legs trembled, his breath came in sharp bursts, but he tightened his grip on the satchel. The message wasn't just paper, it was the heartbeat of thousands. Crawling on his belly, he edged forward, each movement a gamble. A spotlight swept across the ground, forcing him flat into the mud. Soldiers shouted in the distance, rifles slung casually, unaware of the boy hidden in the dirt at their feet. Every second threatened to betray him, the rumble of his stomach, the twitch of his fingers, the pounding drumbeat inside his chest. Then, disaster. A loose stone clattered beneath his boot. The sound was small but sharp enough to slice through the night. The nearest soldier turned, barking a command. Light flared, beams cutting across the ridge. The boy's world narrowed to instinct. Run. He tore through the dark, feet pounding the earth, shouts exploding behind him. Gunfire cracked, dirt spraying at his heels. His satchel bounced wildly, the envelope inside threatening to slip free. He didn't dare stop. Not here, not now. The city depended on him, but he wasn't done. Reinforcements were still miles away. The city still teetered on the edge of ruin. And the boy, nameless and unseen, rose again into the darkness, knowing that a single misstep could erase not just him, but everyone he loved. The city's fate now balanced on his fragile, exhausted shoulders. Hours later, drenched in sweat and mud, he stumbled into the northern garrison. His lips were cracked, his legs trembling, but he clung to the satchel as if his life depended on it. When the officer tore open the envelope, the boy barely heard the words. Reinforcements would march at dawn. The city, his city, would not fall that night. He had done it. An entire population, thousands of souls, owed their survival to the courage of someone they never even knew existed. And yet, as history often does, the truth was quickly buried. Reports spoke of strategic brilliance and decisive leadership. Medals were pinned on generals' uniforms. Speeches praised the bravery of soldiers who fought at the gates. But the boy, his name never appeared. His footsteps vanished into the silence of forgotten streets. In the years that followed, the city rebuilt. Families returned to their markets, children once again played in the squares, and the war became something spoken of only in whispers. But no statue was ever raised for the messenger, no plaque carried his name. He lived and died in obscurity, the story of his impossible journey fading into rumor, then memory, then nothing at all. And yet, his act mattered. It reminds us that history isn't just written by kings and generals. Sometimes it is carried on the fragile shoulders of the unnoticed, the powerless, the forgotten. Heroes are not always those with medals on their chests. Sometimes they are the ones who never expected to be heroes at all. So the question remains, how many of our cities, our lives, our very futures rest on the courage of those whose names we'll never know?